Hey guys, Dave Neal here with a update before the video you're about to watch. I made a video about the composer that took over the It Ends With Us. Blake Lively took him from Deadpool and brought him onto It Ends With Us and the fired composer. So you're about to watch that, but in the middle of the video, we find out that there was actually a podcast that nobody's really listened to. I got clips from that podcast of Rob Simonson, the composer for Deadpool and Wolverine, and also the composer for It Ends With Us, describing the awkward scenario where he was asked last minute to take over the project. That's all coming up right now. Hello everybody, it's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of the Rush Hour podcast with a very big update here. Might not seem like a lot, but there's a lot of meat on the bone with this Blake Lively composer story. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni trading hundreds of millions of dollars in lawsuits, and now we have a composer calling out Blake, says Blake Lively didn't even listen to his score. Now, a score is the general batch of music that goes into what you watch in a film, and it's, you know, a very important big deal. A lot of the music is original, and it's like the heightening instrumental stuff that happens behind scenes to really curry favor for delivering that emotional sort of force that the director envisions. So they did the score, it was done, and then Blake's like, I got a couple guys for this. Brings them in. Her own editors, her own composer. I'm surprised she didn't recast Justin Baldoni. You know what I mean? I'm sure if the technology exists, she'd be like, let's slide someone else's face on that guy. You can use mine. So anyhow, it's a fascinating story, and we've got Daily Mail covering it, of course. Daily Mail is good for two things. One, they drop a lot of good tea. And two, they'll give you a sponsor for everything. I mean, there are 17 different sponsored pop-ups happening right now. We've got roast beef sandwiches and baby clothes and diapers and sunglasses. All right, so anyway, my poor ADHD mind has a hard time reading this. Sad truth behind the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni feud over unnamed It Ends With Us composer revealed. Now, this article has ruffled some feathers. It goes against a story that had Taylor Swift being the one who wanted to fire the previous composer. In this story, they say, no, Taylor Swift never even met the composer. She probably had nothing to do with it, which, by the way, would make it even worse if Blake Lively made that up. Imagine if Blake Lively's like, sorry, got to get rid of your composer. Blake Lively won't do the movie without him. Imagine, have we covered this part? Imagine a story where Blake Lively uses Taylor Swift in order to wedge out the composer for her own. Let's read. Blake Lively left one of the world's highest-grossing film composers fearing for his reputation after she brutally cut him from It Ends With Us and never even listened to his finished score, an insider has told DailyMail.com. Acclaimed musician Brian Tyler, whose credits include a slew of Marvel blockbusters. I'm sure no relation to Steven Tyler, as far as I know. But either way, here's Brian Tyler's pedigree. Avengers, Eagle Eye, Law Abiding Citizen, Iron Man 3, 24-year career, Transformers, The Expendables trilogy. I mean, the guy's literally done it all. So he's a very successful musician. He made the project, and we'll never get to see it. Or will we? Maybe when this is all said and done, it ends with the director's cut. Boy, wouldn't that be nice to watch them back to back? If so, we should do a viewing party. We should do a viewing party where we watch her version, then his version. Or you know what would be nice? And again, it's probably too late if you've already seen the movie, but it would be nice to show a blind sample. Now, by that, I don't mean to blind people, but show both movies, both versions to an audience of 50 or 100 people and see which one they like better. Do a blind taste testing here. Wouldn't that be fun? Acclaimed musician. So anyway, Brian Tyler, whose credits include these movies, he was blindsided after the actress unceremoniously dropped and swiftly replaced him with Rob Simonson and Duncan Blickenstaff, who had worked with her husband Ryan Reynolds on Deadpool just 2 months before the film was released. Which, by the way, makes you wonder, what kind of cut does Ryan Reynolds have in all of this? You know what I mean? It's just looking nasty. Insiders have claimed BAFTA and Emmy Award nominee Tyler, 52 years young, was terrified of people in the industry discovering he had been replaced and was left fearing the impact on his decades-long career. Yeah, we call that a good old cuckold. That's what we call that. When Blake, don't Google, when Blake took over the film, Brian had already finished a majority, if not all, the score, based on what Justin wanted creatively for the film. Blake didn't even listen to his score. She knew that she wanted to bring on Rob and Duncan. And maybe that was to help her, solidify her producer resume. Baldoni had approached Tyler for the project, having worked together on 2019's 5 Feet Apart, about two young patients with cystic fibrosis, and 2020's Clouds, which followed a young musician with terminal cancer. Baldoni and producer Jamie Heath fought with Lively, 37, over the decision to axe Tyler, but were left with no option but to call him and break the devastating news that he was being shafted from the project. By the way, I've got a video coming up right after this that's going to show more of Ryan Reynolds writing that rooftop scene, why that's a scab, what that means, and why it's so looked down upon. So double check, make sure you're subscribed. We release so many videos that if you're not subscribed, YouTube will not alert you of all of them. So double check, subscribe now. Jamie and Justin fought this, obviously, but when it became clear that there was nothing they could do, they called Brian and told him that he was being let go. Brian was paid out his contract in full. And again, it's not about the money, right? It's not about the money. It's about having your art shared. He shared his concern at the time that he did not want it to be known that he was fired. He had never been fired in his life and wanted this to be super confidential. He's listed as uncredited for It Ends With Us on IMDb and his score unused. Let's see if we can find that. Let's see right here. So if you go to what he's known for in his credits, if we go to all credits, it'll be probably the most recent ones. So he's got a few movies upcoming. He did 1923, Yellowstone, Abigail. I mean, the guy's done Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Is that how it goes? 1883. So he's done so much work. But to be quite honest, I don't see him in It Ends With Us. So maybe that's because it's because he's uncredited. So if you go all the way down, okay, it's a whole thing. Aliens versus Predator. I mean, come on, the guy's done a lot of stuff. You don't just go from Aliens versus Predator to Chippendales and not have a good pedigree. So he didn't want people to know he got fired. I get it. The source insisted Tyler never worked with or met Taylor Swift, despite rumors swirling that the singer told Lively she would only allow use of her song if Tyler was not involved. Harvard-educated Tyler is among the top 10 highest-grossing film composers of all time, having seen his films earn around $14.9 billion. All that Chippendales money or whatever. Whatever it's called. His resume includes Marvel, Blockbuster, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Iron Man 3. Okay, so we got all that. And again, just because you did very expensive movies doesn't mean you're the best actor of all time. But, hey, or actor, actually composer. But it's like, those action movies involve a lot of composing. There's a lot of timpanis and, cymbals and things like that. Stay composed. So it continues. His TV credits include Yellowstone franchise, Magnum P.I., Hawaii Five-0. The musician whose grandfather was Academy Award-winning art director Walter Tyler is also the brains behind the Formula One theme, which he performed at a special event to celebrate his 75th anniversary. Simonson, 46, okay, so the guy that was hired, described his impromptu hire as nutty and appeared to hint at unrest behind the scenes during an appearance on Score, the podcast, in September 2024, 1 month after the film was released. Well, I was able to track down this podcast. Look, it only has 600 views. Score, the podcast, season 5 finale, Rob Simonson. Here's the moment at 10:30 where he discusses having scored two of the biggest films in the world, that being Deadpool and Wolverine and It Ends With Us. And again, don't blame him. He just responded to the call. You know what I mean? He didn't know the depths of the destruction happening on It Ends With Us.
And yeah, so it was sequential. Was able to kind of finish up Deadpool, but I was going from the dub of Deadpool and going back to the studio at night working on Blake's film. So
in a
it
week.
was a little nutty. Well, it ended up being about a month.
But I mean, the initial pitch, like just hearing that, is that the most ambitious ask you've ever been approached
Yes.
for?
Yeah,
And
it was.
you going into that, regardless of stretching it out to 3 or 4 weeks, it's very clear that they don't have a lot of time. So when you step in to start writing for that, sometimes that's a luxury, right? Because they can't send a lot of notes. There's no time.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out,
He's
and
like, Blake Lively's going to send a lot of notes.
Blake was she was very clear. She was very fun, and and once we kind of hit on something, we moved on. So
But by the way, that would make sense, right? When someone's like a petulant child, right? Like a kid in a candy shop, they're fine when they're getting their way. It's how do they react when they're not? That's the problem.
that I
That's
didn't know
ideal.
how it was going to go down, but yeah, it was ideal, and really the only way that it could have happened. And I
Can
wonder
I
if we would
just
have had 6 more months or something, if it would have turned out any different. I don't know.
I mean, the truth is, creatively, like artistically, sometimes your not your first take is the best one, but working under pressure can really it can really trigger the adrenaline rush. We can help you focus a lot more. So, hey, that's why you got to do the science fair project the night before. You got wet paper mache all over you because Timmy couldn't do this on a Thursday.
Yeah.
Isn't that perfect? I have to wonder. I mean, no interest in dishing, but was there a composer before that or did they just one day wake up and say, "Oh, you know what we need? A score. Call that guy who's doing my husband's movie. Maybe he has time." I mean, how do you end up getting a call with?
And by the way, such a great question. Again, I know, Dave, why are you interrupting? Such a great question because it's not like these movies aren't planned out with a unit production manager and all of the things as so far in advance. So to wonder like, hey, that clearly some stuff went down. And of course, we'll watch Rob kind of dodge the question.
We're in that kind of a pinch, unless I kind of guessed correctly.
Yeah, I think probably it was a scenario of a last second replacement.
Yeah, and did they know you, the director, and Blake from something else, or was it simply Ryan was bringing home cues from Deadpool, and she said, "Who's that?"
Well, she didn't realize that I had done Age of Adeline, which she loved. So once she kind of made the connection that like I did Age of Adeline, and I think there was some of my music in the temp of the film that was working really well. And then, I guess Ryan would be just sitting in the living room listening to Deadpool cues, and it was pretty sweet. They're both very sweet and very effusive and complimentary. So I think, yeah, probably my name was just kind of haunting around.
So there it is. Work begets work, as they say in the entertainment world. What's interesting is the composer worked on Age of Adeline, and Blake Lively, obviously, at that point in her career, clearly wasn't hijacking that film because she didn't even know that he was the composer. She just knew it came out good. How bizarre. How bizarre. Do. How bizarre. How bizarre. Baldoni would no doubt disagree with Simonson's description of Lively, who filed a California civil rights complaint and a subsequent federal lawsuit in December. Soon followed a 4,000-word New York Times expose based on many of her claims. Last month, Baldoni and his production company, so they go back and forth with all of this, where he claims that she has enormous power to steal an entire film right. Lively is believed to have taken over control of the film around the time of Book Bonanza, Hoover's annual convention hosting authors and fans from around the world. This is just insane. Absolutely insane. So the editors are kicked out. The composers are kicked out. The director gets his name taken off of it. Yikes, yikes, yikes. So of course, and in the interesting part to me actually is how she leveraged Taylor Swift again. If she did, if this is true, and for Taylor Swift, of all of the stuff that's been said about her in the past, there must be a very big sore spot when she's in the news as collateral damage for things that don't matter, right? She had the issue with Scooter Braun. She's accused of being like a diva and hard to work with, and I don't think it's true, but and sadly, that's how a lot of women in high power situations are seen, right? And now we've got possibly Blake Lively saying, hey, Taylor Swift needs to fire that guy or we can't get her. So if you want to get her, And so I mean, that's what crazy people do. They leverage everything they have. Everything is equity. This is what, like, our president does. Oh boy, I lost so many of you, right? But everything's a business deal. Everything is leveraged for what can I get out of it? So if this is true, Blake Lively sees Taylor Swift and says, I'll get you teardrops ricochet off my guitar, or whatever the hell the song's called. But we have to, bing, 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 ding, 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 just like hail hitting the thing, icy. Is it because it's ice? Is it because her tears are icy? I never thought of that. Anyhow, so it's wild. It's a wild deal. And we don't know too much about it, but there are some theories floating on out there. Someone said the trailer was released May 16th and included Taylor's song. So Blake replaced the composer on June 17th, 1 month later. So maybe it was that they already had this song approved for the trailer, but not for the film. Kind of hard to believe. Taylor Swift restarted her Eras tour after a 2-month hiatus on May 9th, 2025 in Europe, after completely changing the setlist choreography of her tour and releasing a new album and music video during that period. The timeline documents state that Blake reached out to Taylor for approval to use the song prior to the trailer's release. It also states Blake made the unilateral decision to replace the composer. If Taylor was involved, I do not think they would have used this specific wording. I don't think Taylor was that involved. She had someone die on her in a plotted terrorist attack during her extremely physically exhausting tour, and also wrote and released a whole new album and 2 re-records, plus changed the setlist and choreography of her tour during the above time frame. The song Blake picked of Taylor's to feature in the movie is about someone stealing someone else's work, which I would like to believe Taylor is too smart to have let her use in a movie that she was stealing from someone else. If Taylor isn't that smart, Tree Paine is, and I guarantee Tree Paine would have known if this was happening. If I am wrong, I will admit it, but I will be shocked. Yeah, that's very interesting. So the timeline is of utter importance about the composer issue. Now, will Justin Baldoni be using any of this in his case? Well, it could play to a greater arc of control, firing the editors, the composer. And if this composer testifies, or, I'm sure they could look at a paper trail of whether or not Blake Lively ever listened to his music. They would know that based on whether or not she ever received the files of his final work. And they claim she never even got them. So looks pretty suspect. How can Blake rationalize firing a composer that she never even listened to? So there's your update. I've got more content coming your way. These stories are not bombshells, but they are interesting, and they continue to pour in. We'll continue to digest them. Thanks so much. We'll be back with a rush hour coming next.